People keep repeating over and over that the Tainos died out in the year 1500, believing it to be a true historical fact. But this information has no basis in any official document to the Spanish crown or in any real report from that time. Everyone keeps repeating with great certainty that the Tainos of Puerto Rico became extinct in the year 1500, but this is a historical lie. So where did this historical lie, the one people still repeat today, actually come from? The root of this error comes from a misinterpretation of a phrase written by the chronicler Gonzalo Fernández de Oviedo in his work General and Natural History of the Indies, written in 1535 and published in its complete form 316 years later in 1851. In Book III, Chapter 11, Oviedo wrote, and I quote, "In the island of San Juan, Puerto Rico, by the year 1500 there was no Indian left who was not a slave or a fugitive, and even those few soon perished." It is essential to remember that this text was written in Old Spanish, with a structure and meaning very different from modern language. This does not mean that all the Tainos died in the year 1500, as we were mistakenly taught in school. What Oviedo really meant is that by that time, almost all of the Tainos had been enslaved or had fled to the mountains, and that the few who remained free were later captured and enslaved, and those enslaved in the plantations died soon afterward. The problem began when this sentence was misinterpreted and taken out of context. For centuries, ill-intentioned people or those influenced by colonial ideologies repeated the phrase as if it implied the total extinction of the Taino people, thus erasing their presence from history. Because we must remember that the Taino, that is the Borinqueño, is the rightful owner of the land of Puerto Rico. To deny that the Tainos still exist is to give foreigners the right to take what belongs to us by ancestral and cultural inheritance. Several reasons contributed to the persistence of this error. The widespread illiteracy during the colonial period, which caused most people to depend on a few individuals to interpret written texts. Since during the Spanish colonial period, the general population did not have the right to education. Only the criollos, that is the sons of Spaniards, were allowed to learn to read and write. The lack of understanding of Old Spanish is what led to translation and reading errors. The lack of contextual historical knowledge, since the social reality of the time was not understood. No one in the coastal areas was aware that the Tainos were still alive and taking refuge in the mountains. There were rumors about it, but they were never confirmed, since those Tainos were not allowed to leave that area. The Tainos were being enslaved, hidden, or mixed with other populations, not extinct, living in extreme poverty and segregation, under a political intention to erase their indigenous heritage, to justify the invasion, forced evangelization, and colonial domination. The kings of Spain never officially declared the Tainos extinct. What did happen was that in 1518, King Charles V signed a royal decree that prohibited calling the Tainos Indians, since according to him, there were no longer any pure Tainos left in the encomiendas. But the king never said they were extinct. He only changed their legal classification. The king knew there were still Tainos on the island, and we have official documents accessible online that prove this knowledge. That is how the myth was born, that the Tainos became extinct in Puerto Rico around the year 1500. Colonial historians never investigated La Indiera of Puerto Rico. They did not look into the documents of the time that mentioned them. Yet there are still official documents from the governors of Puerto Rico to the Spanish crown that confirm the existence of these people. The census documents mention them, and the US documents do as well. The Department of Education accepted the narratives of those historians who denied the existence of the Tainos of La Indiera, even though the evidence showed otherwise. The government, historians, and the Puerto Rican education system hid for years the fact that there has always been an area in Puerto Rico known as La Indiera, where Tainos literally lived, preserving their culture from ancient times all the way into the 20th century. This is why many Puerto Ricans do not know that they are direct descendants of La Indiera. La Indiera covered 6 municipalities in Puerto Rico, located in the mountainous center of the island. misinterpreted phrases became a convenient narrative, repeated for centuries by empires and educational systems that sought to make people believe that indigenous peoples had disappeared. Combined with the lack of an educational system committed to teaching historical facts instead of colonial propaganda, this has caused the myth to endure to this day. But the truth, supported by documents, archaeology, genetics, and oral tradition, shows that the Tainos did not disappear. They survived. Follow us and give this video a like so you can learn about the evidence found in the reports to the Spanish Crown, where the indigenous people of La Indiera in Puerto Rico are mentioned throughout the centuries, in our next video. Because the Tainos are still here and we remember,